What happens when an elderly black woman calmly faces racial taunts in a store, only to reveal an unexpected truth that sends shockwaves through the crowd? Imagine a peaceful afternoon turning into a powerful revelation, where a moment of hate is met with a truth that will forever change how people see the world around them. This is not just about a moment of prejudice. This is about the power of hidden truths and the transformation they bring. A quiet afternoon unfolds in a local store nestled in the heart of a bustling neighborhood. Shelves are lined with household essentials, and a few shoppers move about gathering their items for the day. The air is calm, and the store exudes an almost nostalgic atmosphere, as if time itself slows down inside. The sound of the soft hum of the lights and the occasional clink of a shopping cart adds to the tranquility. Evelyn, a dignified woman in her late 70s, slowly walks down one of the aisles. She is an elderly black woman with silver hair, neatly tucked beneath a headscarf and glasses perched on her nose. Her cane taps rhythmically on the floor, a soothing sound in contrast to the sharpness of the environment around her. She is taking her time, examining the shelves, looking for what she needs for her home. Though she moves with deliberate steps, her posture remains tall, exuding a quiet sense of purpose and grace that many might overlook. Unbeknownst to Evelyn, her calm presence in the store has caught the attention of a young woman nearby, someone with a mind filled with prejudices. This woman, in her early 30s, stands next to a shelf of cleaning products, eyeing Evelyn with a dismissive look. She mutters something under her breath, assuming Evelyn won't hear, but her words are loud enough for others to pick up. "How did she even get in here?" the woman sneers. "They let anyone shop in this place now." Her voice is harsh, not bothering to hide her disdain. Evelyn, walking just a few feet away, does not react. She doesn't even look up. But the woman's voice continues, growing louder, now directed at no one in particular, but for everyone in the store to hear. "She doesn't belong here," the woman scoffs. "People like her don't need to be in a nice place like this. It's not like she can afford anything here anyway." Evelyn's hand rests lightly on her cane as she continues her path down the aisle. She remains calm, though it is clear she has heard every word. Her demeanor does not change. The woman's comments, though hurtful, do not ruffle Evelyn's composure. The woman, seeing that her taunts are not having the desired effect, takes a few steps closer, her voice sharp and insistent. "Why don't you just leave?" she says. "You don't belong here." The silence in the aisle deepens as the rest of the customers begin to notice the exchange. A few awkward glances are exchanged, but no one steps in. They watch quietly, unsure of how to respond, caught between discomfort and uncertainty. Evelyn, however, doesn't look back. She keeps walking, as if the woman's words are nothing more than the noise of a passing storm. But the woman isn't done. With a sneer, she makes another remark, louder this time. "It's people like you that ruin everything. You don't belong in places like this." And still, Evelyn continues walking with the same unshaken calm. Her steps are measured, and her gaze stays focused ahead, as if she's heard all of this before. It's a scene many people of color know all too well, an unwarranted attack based on nothing more than bias and misunderstanding. And though Evelyn could choose to respond, she knows all too well that it's not always worth it. She's lived through far worse, and sometimes the best response is no response at all. As she turns the corner of the aisle, ready to leave the woman's taunts behind her, the woman, growing more frustrated by Evelyn's silence, calls out to her one final time, "Leave before I call security." Evelyn pauses, just for a moment. She doesn't turn around, but her voice, soft and steady, carries through the stillness. "I don't need to leave. I have as much right to be here as you." In that brief exchange, Evelyn's quiet confidence becomes a beacon of strength for everyone who's been watching. What follows next will make clear that, despite the hate she faces, she knows that respect and grace will always speak louder than the ugly words of prejudice. Evelyn's story begins decades ago in a segregated neighborhood where opportunities for black families were scarce, and the laws of the land reflected an inequitable world. Born during a time when the fight for civil rights was both urgent and dangerous, Evelyn didn't simply observe the battle. She became a part of it. Raised by parents who taught her that dignity was something that couldn't be stripped away, no matter how hard the world tried to break her, Evelyn learned the power of resilience early on. She marched, she protested, and she stood tall even when society attempted to keep her in a place of subjugation. Despite the overt racism she faced, Evelyn didn't let it define her. She fought for what was right, often risking her own safety to stand up for equal rights, knowing that her actions would have far-reaching consequences for future generations. Even when the world told her she didn't belong, she found ways to contribute to her community, offering guidance and wisdom to younger people, encouraging them to never give up, no matter the obstacles they faced. Evelyn became a respected community leader, an unshakable figure who showed everyone around her that grace, resilience, and hard work could change the course of history. As the years passed and the world began to shift, Evelyn's purpose remained the same. She continued to educate and inspire the younger generation, helping them understand that the fight for justice and equality didn't stop with the past victories, but was an ongoing battle. Though she had reached advanced age, Evelyn's fire still burned brightly. She had lived through turbulent times, seen progress and witnessed setbacks, but one thing remained certain: she would always fight for what was right, even when it wasn't easy. Sarah, on the other hand, had lived a very different life. Born into privilege, she grew up in a world that had largely sheltered her from the harsh realities faced by those on the other side of the tracks. Raised in a neighborhood where wealth and status were prioritized, Sarah had never encountered the kind of adversity that others faced, especially those from marginalized racial and socioeconomic backgrounds. In her world, racism was often implicit, woven into the fabric of her upbringing and worldview. She was taught, whether knowingly or unknowingly, that people of different races and backgrounds were less than or inferior. To Sarah, her views were not up for debate because she had never been challenged to examine them. Sarah's life of privilege, where access to education, wealth, and social circles was easy, allowed her to dismiss or look down on people she felt didn't meet her standard of success. Her attitude towards people of color, like Evelyn, reflected her deep-seated prejudices. She assumed that individuals who came from backgrounds different from hers, particularly those from lower income or non-white communities, were beneath her. This entitlement became a part of her identity, something she carried into every interaction without question. When Evelyn crossed Sarah's path in the store, her immediate reaction to the elderly woman was one of disdain. She looked at Evelyn not as an individual, but as an example of the stereotype she had internalized. Without even considering who Evelyn was or her life's accomplishments, Sarah assumed Evelyn was just another inferior person, undeserving of respect or kindness. The harshness of her attitude reflected her inability to see beyond her narrow worldview. Her lack of exposure to diverse perspectives and experiences had shielded her from understanding the struggles that people like Evelyn had endured. However, neither Evelyn nor Sarah understood that their encounter in the store would be the catalyst for a significant shift. For Evelyn, it was a painful reminder of the prejudice that had marked her life for decades. But for Sarah, it would soon be the eye-opening moment that forced her to confront the reality of her biases. In the presence of Evelyn, Sarah's prejudices would be exposed, and a transformation would begin, not just for the two women, but for everyone around them. It's through moments like these, when prejudice is met with grace and resilience, that the possibility for change becomes tangible. Evelyn, a woman who had fought tirelessly for justice, was about to unknowingly be the spark that would challenge Sarah's views and change her life forever. The truth that Evelyn carried with her wasn't just her history or her identity. It was the power to shift the course of someone else's journey, forcing them to re-examine everything they had once believed to be true. And in that moment, the power of hidden truths would be revealed in a way that would leave everyone around them forever changed. Evelyn quietly walked through the aisles of the store, her cane tapping gently with each step. The hustle and bustle of the afternoon rush surrounded her, but she focused on her task. She had come to purchase a few items, nothing extravagant, but the peace she sought was about to be shattered. Behind her, Sarah stood, clearly growing more irritated with every passing moment. At first, the insults were subtle, whispered only to herself. But soon, Sarah couldn't hold back. Loud enough for those nearby to hear, she muttered, "People like her don't belong in stores like this." Her tone dripped with disdain, and her eyes were locked on Evelyn, who was still calmly perusing the shelves. Evelyn, visibly upset but composed, moved further down the aisle, hoping to ignore the growing tension. She had faced this kind of prejudice before, but the sting never quite left her. She knew better than to react to such insults, especially when they were coming from someone like Sarah, who believed herself to be so much better simply because of the color of her skin. But Sarah wasn't finished. "I mean, come on, look at her," Sarah continued, now speaking even louder, as if trying to ensure that everyone heard her. "This place only caters to people with class. She doesn't belong here." The mocking tone in Sarah's voice grew harsher, the words cutting deep. At that moment, Evelyn, with her head held high, quietly moved on, making her way toward the counter. She could feel the weight of Sarah's words, but she refused to show it. She had been here before. Throughout her life, Evelyn had faced disrespect, ridicule, and prejudice, yet she had never let it break her resolve. It was all part of the battle she had fought for so long, maintaining dignity in a world that often tried to strip it away. But Sarah wasn't going to let it go. As Evelyn walked towards the cashier, Sarah's voice grew louder. "Honestly, you'd think people like her would know their place. She's just a relic of a bygone era who needs to go back to where she belongs." Sarah's words echoed in the store, and her hatred filled the air, making everyone within earshot uncomfortable. It wasn't just the words. It was the venom in her voice that seemed to seep into the atmosphere. Evelyn, still composed, walked up to the counter to complete her purchase. She could feel the eyes of the other customers on her, some uncomfortable, some whispering to one another. A few had even pulled out their phones, recording the incident. Despite this, Evelyn remained dignified, her movements steady and graceful as she placed her items on the counter. The cashier looked nervously from Evelyn to Sarah, unsure of how to intervene. Meanwhile, Sarah continued to belittle the elderly woman, speaking in louder and more derogatory terms. Evelyn overheard every word, but she did not flinch. Her calmness only seemed to fuel Sarah's outrage further. "Do you even know what class is? Because clearly you don't," Sarah sneered. "You're just out of place. You don't belong in places like this. This is for people who actually matter." Her words were now cutting deeper than ever before, aimed directly at Evelyn's heart. Despite the blatant disrespect, Evelyn's eyes remained calm, and her posture did not waver. It was as if the anger in Sarah's words had no power over her. Evelyn had spent a lifetime building the resilience that allowed her to navigate the world with grace, even when the world wasn't kind to her. But this moment, like so many others, would come to pass as another chapter in the long story of racial injustice. Evelyn completed her purchase and turned to walk out, but before she did, she paused. In that still moment, she could feel the weight of all the years of struggle, all the pain of being overlooked and belittled. But she knew that today, the story would take a turn, and Sarah would soon learn that her words and actions would have consequences. Evelyn had learned that true power didn't lie in loud voices or harsh words, but in the quiet dignity and strength of those who endure and rise above. At that moment, the door to the store swung open, and the world would soon see a change. The store's atmosphere shifted, tension hanging in the air as Sarah continued to make her harsh remarks. But as Evelyn reached the counter to complete her transaction, the store manager suddenly approached her with a smile. He greeted her warmly. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Evelyn Johnson." His voice was clear and respectful, cutting through the tension in the room. Sarah paused mid-sentence, her eyes narrowing as she heard the name. The manager continued, "It's great to see you here today. I hope the store is treating you well, as usual. We really appreciate all the work you've done in the community." He spoke with such familiarity and respect, and the whole atmosphere of the store seemed to shift. The once uncomfortable customers, some who had been watching in silence, now stood a little taller, taking notice of the interaction. Evelyn, still calm, smiled politely at the manager, though her eyes never left Sarah. As the manager continued to speak, he revealed just how impactful Evelyn truly was. "Mrs. Johnson," he said, "has worked with multiple local foundations and organizations over the years. She's helped shape policies that have benefited our community, and she's mentored countless individuals, many of whom are now in powerful positions in local government, business, and law." Sarah's face drained of color as the full weight of the situation began to sink in. She had assumed, based on nothing more than her own racial biases, that Evelyn was just an elderly black woman in a store who didn't belong. But in reality, Evelyn was a pillar of the community, someone who had fought for justice and equality, long before Sarah had even considered what those terms meant. As the manager spoke, the room grew quiet, and Sarah realized the gravity of her mistake. The mockery, the insults, the unearned sense of superiority, all of it was about to come crashing down on her. Evelyn turned toward Sarah slowly, her smile still composed, but with a calm power behind it. She spoke softly but firmly, her voice cutting through the silence. "You have no idea who you're talking to. I spent my life fighting for the dignity of everyone, including yours. Maybe you should think before you speak next time." The words hung in the air like a weight. Sarah's eyes widened in disbelief, and she stumbled over her words. The realization hit her hard. She had just disrespected someone who had spent decades working toward justice, equity, and equality. Evelyn wasn't just a random shopper in a store. She was a respected leader, a figure whose legacy shaped the very fabric of the community. The room that had once been full of tension was now full of silence as Evelyn's words sunk in. Sarah's face flushed with shame and she stammered an apology, but it was already too late. The damage had been done, and Evelyn's grace and poise in the face of such demeaning treatment had spoken louder than any apology could. The crowd, who had been watching in stunned silence, now began to whisper among themselves. They could feel the shift in the atmosphere, the power of Evelyn's calm, dignified response to the hate she had just endured. They watched in awe as Evelyn stood tall, not only showing her strength, but also revealing the deep respect she had earned over her lifetime of hard work and service. Her legacy, built on fighting for others, had far more weight than anything Sarah could have ever imagined. As Sarah stood there, completely exposed in her ignorance and prejudice, the weight of Evelyn's calm strength continued to resonate. Evelyn had not only revealed the truth about her own legacy, but had also shown the entire store a profound lesson in humility, grace, and the power of standing up against hate. And with that, Evelyn calmly returned her attention to the cashier, ignoring Sarah, whose shame was now on full display for everyone to witness. The room that had once been filled with whispers of prejudice was now filled with admiration for the woman who had risen above it all. The store's atmosphere remained tense after Evelyn's revelation, and it didn't take long for the situation to escalate. The manager, visibly concerned, walked over to Sarah and asked her to leave. "I think it's best if you step outside," he said, his tone no longer polite, but firm. "Your behavior is unacceptable, and we cannot tolerate this in our establishment." Sarah hesitated for a moment, but realizing she had no support, she gathered her things and left the store, her face flushed with embarrassment. The incident quickly gained attention beyond the store's walls. The manager made a formal report to the authorities, detailing Sarah's racially charged actions. The story spread like wildfire, with news outlets picking it up and social media users discussing it for days. Public outcry was swift, and Sarah faced heavy criticism from both her peers and strangers alike. Many condemned her actions, calling them out as blatant racism, while others demanded consequences for her behavior. Evelyn, on the other hand, remained calm in the midst of the storm. Rather than retaliating or focusing on the humiliation she had faced, she saw this as an opportunity to educate. She used the incident to speak about the importance of racial respect, the harm that prejudice causes, and the need for individuals to acknowledge their history and the struggles of others. "We all have a part to play in making this world better," she said in interviews. "It starts with kindness, understanding, and a willingness to learn from each other." The store, now under scrutiny for allowing such behavior to unfold, quickly responded. They pledged to implement sensitivity training for all their staff, ensuring that something like this would never happen again. The manager, who had supported Evelyn from the start, publicly apologized for the store's failure to prevent the incident. "We should have stepped in sooner," he said. "Our goal is to create a welcoming environment for everyone, and we fell short. For that, we deeply apologize." The incident had far-reaching consequences, especially within the community. Evelyn's bravery and calmness in the face of adversity sparked local discussions on racial respect, inclusivity, and how to break down long-standing biases. Local schools, businesses, and community groups reached out to Evelyn for guidance, asking her to help lead workshops and conversations about racism and equality. She agreed, knowing this was the perfect moment to inspire lasting change. Her influence, built over a lifetime of fighting for justice, was now amplified. People who had once dismissed her or overlooked her began to recognize the importance of her work. They began to see her not just as an elderly woman, but as a powerful figure whose wisdom could guide them toward a more equitable society. Evelyn's reputation as a community leader grew, and she used her newfound platform to advocate for policies that would make the community safer and more inclusive for everyone, regardless of their race or background. Though the incident had started with hate, it ended with a call for understanding, compassion, and growth. Evelyn's dignified response showed that even in the face of prejudice, there's always an opportunity to turn the tide. The ripple effect of her actions continued to spread throughout the town, reaching local leaders and citizens alike, all of whom now understood the importance of recognizing the humanity of others and fighting against bias, one action at a time. Evelyn continued her work, fueled by the support she received, and with a renewed sense of purpose. The community had heard her message loud and clear, and the changes that followed were a testament to the strength and power of standing up for what is right, no matter how difficult the journey may seem. The aftermath of the incident continues to reverberate throughout the community. The store, now under heavy scrutiny for its previous failure to prevent such behavior, takes bold steps toward change. Management implements comprehensive diversity training programs for all employees, focusing on fostering inclusivity and respect for all customers, regardless of their background. They establish new hiring practices that reflect these values, ensuring the staff mirrors the diversity of the community they serve. The store becomes a model of inclusivity, and the once negative spotlight on it shifts to a positive example for other businesses to follow. In the weeks that follow, Evelyn's name becomes synonymous with strength and dignity. Her story circulates through local media outlets, inspiring people from all walks of life. It sparks conversations in schools, workplaces, and local community centers about racial equity, respect, and the importance of standing up against injustice. People in the community, many of whom had never truly known Evelyn or her work, now recognize her as a pivotal figure in the fight for equality and justice. They rally behind her vision for a more equitable society, one where respect is at the core of every interaction, and they begin to take action in their own lives to make her dream a reality. Evelyn's influence grows even further as she continues to speak at local events and participate in community discussions. She shares her experiences, encouraging others to not only stand up to racism, but to actively work toward a more inclusive world. Her words resonate with everyone from young students to community leaders, all of whom recognize the power of unity in the face of adversity. Evelyn's calm, dignified response to the racism she encountered serves as a blueprint for how to navigate hate with grace and strength. Final scene. As the community continues to change, Evelyn steps out of the store one afternoon walking slowly with her cane, a picture of dignity. A few grateful patrons who had witnessed the events and been inspired by her actions approach her with warm smiles and quiet admiration. They see her not just as an elderly woman, but as a living testament to the power of resilience, wisdom, and grace in the face of prejudice. Evelyn stands tall, surrounded by people whose lives have been changed because of her quiet strength and willingness to speak out. Her walk through the store's door is a reminder of the legacy she's building, one that transcends age and time. She's not just a symbol of the fight for racial justice. She's a living legacy of courage and change. Every step she takes is a reminder of how one person's steadfast belief in equality can reshape the world around them. Final line. Respect is earned, not given. It's a legacy passed on to each generation, and I've spent my life ensuring it survives. Evelyn's story will live on long after she leaves the store, inspiring generations to come to continue her work and carry the torch of equality forward.